Week 15, the NFL was a thriller from start to finish. We had an okay game Thursday night, but just banger after banger on Saturday. We had fun games all throughout the day on Sunday following that World Cup. So, coming down from a bit of a high to recap week number 15, we're going to break down key usages, role changes, injuries to note from week 15, take a look forward to week 16 in our final recap podcast of the year. This is the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here as always by Brandon Gdula. He is the senior managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, week 15 is in the books. It was pretty fun. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Some fun football to watch. A little annoyed that you keep beating me in our head-to-heads and that I have been jokingly suggesting that I'll throw this so that I have to buy you a really big hat. But I'm getting a little bit nervous. So if you could stop winning, I'd appreciate that.
I still have to win 2 out of the final 3 to tie you, though, which means I dug myself a big old hole. I won the first 2, and somehow I'm still in this situation. Won the first 2, have won the past 3. It's upsetting we got to this point.
You know what they say, though? Jim before October and after Thanksgiving is a
Jim
force
Hember.
to be reckoned with.
Jim Hember.
Yeah.
We did get a little bit of December Derrick Henry yesterday. That was fun. I enjoyed that. But overall, a fun slate because honestly, I think it was because the teams I like wound up playing pretty well. Like, I'm a huge Jags guy now.
Love the Jaguars.
Like, they're a delight. I had Zay Jones in our head-to-head, basically needed nothing else to cash. Zay Jones, Derrick Henry did all the work for me. I mean, that's all you needed, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. And look, if you listened to the show before, you know that we talk about like mistake erasers and guys who actually have upside. And
Zay Jones, mistake eraser.
But there's a difference between saving salary with Zay Jones, who gets volume, can get downfield work. We know he has, touchdown upside, is in an offense that can score points. It's a lot different than maybe punting with someone like a Chris Moore was down there as well. These players on teams that don't necessarily have as good of situations. And so, it's important and it's something that we're gonna have to keep in mind the rest of the way, because we're going to start to get, this guy's kind of out for the season, so we're getting some backups, and that doesn't necessarily mean that those guys have the juice that we need, that win juice that we desire.
And looking ahead to the week 16 main slate, there are a lot of studs with very high salaries that we're going to want to get to. So we got to decide which of those value plays have upside to justify their inclusion, and that will not be easy. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about salaries and the week 16 slate and get you set for that and take a look back at week 15 in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Unique schedule for this week because we have the Christmas holidays coming up. I will be doing our week 16 main slate show on Wednesday instead of Thursday. So main slate show Wednesday, we'll still have 1 round of injury reports at that point. So not totally flying in the dark there. That'll be up on Wednesday. We're recording live on the FanDuel YouTube page at noon Eastern on Wednesday. So if you want to get that, make sure you're subscribed there. Also check us out on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. With only a handful of Monday Night Football games remaining this season, FanDuel and Visa are coming together to make sure the excitement surrounding Monday nights is at an all-time high. Introducing Monday Night Perfect Picks presented by Visa, a free-to-play contest on FanDuel that gives you a chance to win a share of $10,000 in cash prizes courtesy of Visa. Here's how it works. You'll be presented with 10 questions centered around on-field action for Monday night's NFL game. Fans who answer the most questions correctly win their share of the $10,000 prize pool. It's that easy. The contest is now live. So at FanDuel.com/free/contest/Visa Perfect Picks and make your picks before Monday night. That's FanDuel.com/free/contest/Visa Perfect Picks. No purchase necessary. Age and location restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See full terms at FanDuel.com. Visa and its financial institutions have not sponsored or offered this promotion in any way. Let's start things off with the headliner this week. And with no like key injuries. There are a couple we could talk about. No massive role changes. We're going to talk about our Jags, the headliners here for week number 15, because Brandon, you did a trend 2 weeks ago about the Jags upside. And since then, Evan Engram has gone for like 155-2, and Zay Jones went for like $130-3. So the Jags have upside, and we should talk about that. It's a very DFS friendly offense. Trevor Lawrence in this game against the Cowboys, 318 yards, and he's now thrown for at least 300 yards in 3 of the past 4 games. He has 3 more touchdowns in 3 of the 4 as well. He has multiple rush attempts in each game. His success is extending to the pass catchers too, because on Sunday, 3 different guys on the Jags had 92 scrimmage yards. Those were Travis Etienne at 127, Zay Jones at 109, Christian Kirk at 92. Since their Week 11 bye, the Jags rank 2nd in the NFL in passing net expected points per dropback. And although the rushing hasn't been efficient, Travis Etienne has had a 70% snap share in those as well. So, Brandon, how high is too high to get on our Jags?
I don't know if the limit exists, Jim. I don't know.
I watched a Lindsay Lohan movie on Netflix. It's a Christmas movie, and it was pretty good. I don't mean it was like good, but it was like entertaining. Falling for Christmas would recommend.
Yeah, but I mean, all those movies, like you got to scale a movie to what the expectation is, or else most movies are going to.
I enjoyed myself. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really fun offense. It's got multiple players we can consider, but not so many that it's impossible to predict. Generally, the salaries are low. I don't know what it's going to look like. They play on Thursday, so it's going to be a single game slate with their salaries. But, we'll see what they do against the Jets. I think that'll be a really tough test for them to see how they come out on a short week after a pretty emotional win against Dallas. I think the irony in all of this is if you look specifically at those past 4 games where Lawrence has 300 yards or more in at least 3 touchdowns in 3 of the 4, the one outlier was at the Lions when he had 179 yards and a touchdown. It's a little bit strange to see that, but I mean, all things considered, it's a fun offense. Ideally, the salaries are not look, it's a single game slate. That's a whole different ball game, but presumably they're not going to do a ton against the Jets and come back to us on a main slate after, I'm assuming they're on the week 17 main slate.
Hopefully.
Just whenever we see them next. And so the salaries might be in check. But yeah, this offense is fun. It's great. We get Etienne, Zay, Kirk, and Lawrence, and maybe some Engram as well.
I do think that Christian Kirk is going to have a big game here pretty soon. Mm-hmm. It might actually be on Thursday because the Jets' outside wide receivers are pretty sick. And you look at their usage recently, and honestly, like Kirk is pretty much right there with Zay. If you look at their like full season numbers, are almost identical in terms of usage.
Yeah.
In this game on Sunday, Kirk had 4 deep targets compared to 3 for Zay. So I think that they're kind of the same. And so when Zay was $800 lower salary this week, it made sense to go to Zay. But if you're talking about Thursday specifically, that's a good time, I think, to go back to Kirk because he still has, like, if we're talking about Jags with upside, he is in that discussion still, despite the fact it's been a bit of a lull for him. The one guy I have a little bit of concern on is Etienne. He had a fumble again this week. He left the game a bit for an ankle, to be checked for an ankle. He came back, obviously, and still played a lot of snaps. His yardage was good this week for the first time in a while. Slight concern there, given that the foot injuries / ankle injuries have been there quite a bit. There have been some fumbles and stuff like that. I think that's like, if I were to mention any negatives here, be a little bit of concern on Etienne, but I mean, everything else I think is firing on all cylinders. Also, their defense stinks, which is great for us for DFS.
Yeah, Etienne, according to the Next Gen Stats model, 58% rushing success rate this week, 1.07 rushing yards over expectation per carry. Not good EPA numbers because of the fumble, but I'm with you. But it's also we're getting to the point in the NFL season where we might get some guys who step into 75, 80% snap rates that are still at low salaries just because of the way the end of the season works. But as it stands, it's hard to hate on Etienne. if he's going to be in the 7,000 range with his workload tied to a good offense.
And especially because like I know the points have not been there recently, but he scored 11 this week with no touchdowns and a fumble, which means he was around like 13 just based on yards from scrimmage, which is pretty good.
I had him at 18 expected FanDuel points based on the underlying data for him this week.
Yeah. This week, 4 out of 11 red zone chances. He's still got a good role.
This is not a Devin Singletary like
no,
70% snap rate thing.
Yeah. He is now at 100 or more yards in scrimmage in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games this year. Pretty good number. So ETN, if it weren't for like those foot injuries, kind of like being there and the fumbles, I'd be much, much higher on him buying in, but I'm still high. Just that's the one thing holding me back a little bit there. Let's go to the injury section here from week number 15, starting off with that Saturday game. Jonathan Taylor suffered another ankle injury on Saturday. It's a mild sprain, but still may end his season, according to Adam Schefter. Zach Moss was the lead back here for the Colts. He played 67% of the snaps ahead of Deion Jackson at 32%. Moss had 24 carries and 1 target for 81 yards and a very, very positive script where they were up 33-0 at halftime. What went wrong after that? He had 8 out of 14 red zone chances. So the offense is bad, I think. Moss ran a route on just 10 out of 36 dropbacks, but should get the early down work. And that's worth something at least. So how would you view Moss if we assume Taylor misses time?
Oh man, this is a tough one. Because I'm coming off of a getting burned by Deontay Foreman situation this week, where you kind of take like someone with an early down role and an offense that, is not flawless by any means. And I don't know, on that broadcast, like they were talking about Zach Moss being like the power back and like being good. And I'm not sure that he's like great.
He was like a throw-in in the Nyheim Hines trade, and you don't make a guy a throw-in if he's a difference maker.
So like, I don't want to get like, I don't want to be dismissive of someone who could have, a pretty sizable role with, he had 8 red zone carries. I don't want to be dismissive of that, but I don't like to play guys based on their salary. And I think if I played Zach Moss, it would be because he's at a low salary, not because I liked him at his salary. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Foreman comp is good because we have no evidence to suggest that he get work in the passing game. I think Deion Jackson is better in the passing game. Like Zach Moss, I think at Utah was pretty involved. I can't remember I know that he has passing game ability, but I'm guessing they'd probably prefer Deion Jackson in that role. So if they get the Chargers, which means it's a good matchup, that's on Monday night. So it's a good matchup and means that they might be involved because the Chargers refuse to win in like convincing fashion. But like, I think that for me, honestly, it's one of those situations where I'm glad it's not on the main slate. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's say it was on the main slate. It's a good matchup on the ground. What kind of salary would you?
64. Like that's what Foreman was this week.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. If he would be like 68, I'd be like, I can't consider that.
Yeah.
So it's
$40 makes a big difference. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, single game slate's different, but yeah.
Let's talk about the main slate and a game that could have been fun, but now question marks. That is the Chiefs and the Seahawks next week. Tyler Lockett broke his finger. Almost will miss this week against the Chiefs. Could be back as soon as week 17. Lockett played almost the entire game, and he has not missed significant time this season. So not a lot to go with in terms of a sample on them without Lockett. In week 15, Lockett tied DK Metcalf for a team high 9 targets. Marquise Goodwin was running the third most routes already behind Lockett and Metcalf. He had 5 targets on Thursday. Noah Fant had 6 targets. So I think Lockett is a good enough player where you get into the discussion of how much does he downgrade the offense not being there? I think that's a legit thing as far as like Geno. And how do we view guys like Metcalf, Goodwin, and Fant with Lockett being out against the Chiefs?
Yeah, I think you do have to downgrade them, but I don't know what the slate's going to look like just yet. It's early in the show. We let that unfold. I'm sure there's going to be weather concerns for some games to make them even worse. I don't know if there's weather concerns for this game.
I'll check.
But presumably this is going to be one of the better games. And so I will kind of anticipate being there with whatever value is available. The fact that Goodwin already was involved is a different situation than, trying to project who's going to step into a bigger role. So if he's like low 5,000s, I could see myself plugging him in there to get some access to Mahomes, Kelsey, and just game stack this one. But
Yeah.
I kind of hope that the Kenneth Walker not huge game has his salary reasonable.
Yeah.
And I think that his, he can, speaking of, catching passes in college, Kenneth Walker can catch passes apparently in the NFL. So I kind of have my fingers crossed for Kenneth Walker this week.
Where do you think that salary should be on? First, weather. So no snow there. Wind speeds around 10 miles per hour, so not bad. However, 8 degrees at kickoff. So a little chilly. Little chilly. That's fine though. That's not like that doesn't end the world. So name me a salary on. I think we know Metcalf. We don't need to worry about that. But like, name me a salary on Kenneth Walker and Marquise Goodwin, and also Noah Fant. Out of curiosity.
Walker probably. He should be in like the 74, 75 range still, I think.
I thought 77 was mine.
Goodwin, I would play him in this game, assuming it's going to be as good as I think it is relative to the rest, so long as he's below 6,000. But I would realistically say like 57.
Yeah,
put him like that Michael Gallup range.
Yeah.
And then Fant probably.
Don't say that name, by the way. Don't say Gallup. I can't say it yet. Please don't. Michael Gallup and Zay Jones game stacks combined for like 33 points, though.
Yeah. And then Fant probably somewhere in like I'd put him like above a Cole Kmet this week by a tinge. So maybe like 50, 54. 53.
I think he is Cole Kmet.
Yeah,
like
that's fine.
53, but I use Kmet at 53.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad thing. Okay, so Kenneth Walker, let's start there. He is 69. That's
nice.
Down, right?
That's nice. Let's write that one down.
Aha! We have value. Aha! Now, the one thing with that is downgrading the team probably hurts him more than it hurts other guys. So that's worth noting, but still.
And we didn't like get into him, but 75% snap rate, 64% route rate. The production just wasn't there.
Buddy, let's party.
It's the first time in like, it feels like 5 weeks that we've actually had a write down
for a running back. Yeah.
Well,
we've had some receivers that like we liked.
A few, but I feel like it's been at least 2 weeks since I've had any write downs at all.
Like I've had DJ Chark not this past week, but 2 weeks before that. That was just me, maybe. But 69 is a write down salary for Kenneth Walker. Looks like a DK for funsies, 8,000. That's fine. I think that's fair. Marquise Goodwin, 58. So right in line with us. Not a write down, but good enough. And Noah Fant is 53. Hey,
53. Okay.
Listened.
So we did a pretty good job there, but we were high on Walker, but that's fine.
About 77 on Walker, so I was a little bit higher than you were even.
Yeah.
That's sick. I'm okay with that.
I might end up. It is 10:18 Eastern time Monday morning. We have been through like 3 blurbs. I might have 100% Kenneth Walker for the Saturday main slate.
I'm into it. I'm into it. Okay. Colt McCoy suffered a concussion. He was ruled out for the Cardinals. That left Trace McSorley or McScorley, depending on, how things go.
It's all perspective.
It's like the Nate Sudfeld thing. If he doesn't do a lot, it's Nate Sudfeld. If he does score, it's Nate Studfeld. So just, McScorley is out there. Didn't do a whole lot on Sunday. Negative 0.39 passing net expected points per dropback for McSorley. He picked off twice. I was off this passing offense with McCoy, especially in a matchup with the Broncos. So that's not going to be better for this. You still could have considered James Conner. He had 24 carries on a target for 91 yards and a 92% snap rate. I just don't know what the upside is in this offense. I'm probably out, whether it's McCoy or McSorley, unless it's a sick matchup and a low salary. What about you if we assume McCoy misses time?
Yeah, so in this game specifically, 31% target share for DeAndre Hopkins. 11 targets for 60 yards. Catch rate over expectation of basically -12. Marquise Brown -23% catch rate over expectation on his 8 targets for 19 yards. Wow. How do you get Marquise Brown 8 targets for 19 yards?
I mean, we know.
That's
we know the answer. Backup quarterbacks.
So again, like, it's not that everyone's in play on a single game slate, but a single game slate is extremely different than having this game on a
they play the Bucks on Sunday night.
So like they'll be on a 3-game slate. You could probably differentiate by going there, but obviously that's obviously that's not a priority for anybody, but we get the games we get there.
Yeah.
Green Bay at Miami.
We were going to do a full podcast on this, but I have to change my travel plans because there's a giant snowstorm in the Midwest. I'm driving. So I'm glad we can't do a show on this on that slate. It's bad.
Well, just to finish that, Green Bay at Miami, Denver at the Rams. So
that's the Nickelodeon game.
Oh. Does that
poor kids.
Change things?
Yeah. Kids across America crying.
This is one of those, though, like you could spin it and just be like, no, because this is a defensive battle. Like that, was it the Patriots Rams Super Bowl?
Like 9-6 or whatever it was.
And people were like, no, this is a great defensive showing. And it's like, no, this is horrific offense. Like there's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like with the Cardinals, if they're on a main slate, I just don't think they have the juice to like, you talk about mistake erasers. Can anyone on that team be a mistake eraser with this bad of quarterback play?
I don't think, because like the thing is, you would say, well, Hopkins is still going to get his volume, and he got 11 targets for 60 yards. Like, and that can turn into 11 targets for a bit more, but I don't think it's like
162.
It's not like 20-point upside. And we're not going to get Hopkins in like the 6,000 range to account for any of this. So I don't really think that there's a whole lot of interest for this team on a main slate.
I agree. Okay, Caleb Huntley left for the Falcons with an ankle injury and did not return. It helped springboard Tyler Algier to 136 yards overall, 17 carries and a target. He did play fewer snaps than Cordero Patterson, and Avery Williams still got some passing game work. So even if you take Huntley out of this backfield, I don't think I'll be super into either Algier or Patterson. What about you?
I mean, they ran a ton more, they ran a ton, not necessarily more, but with Desmond Ridder, I think you're going to get a big dip in efficiency overall. This is not the backfield that we target. If you have 2 guys who are playing 40% of snaps, I at least need it to be like J.K. Dobbins tied to Lamar Jackson to consider it. I have no interest in Atlanta backs, including Cordero, and I haven't really been there all season.
I agree. We'll talk about the passing offense because that could be different in the philosophical section. Not truly an injury here because Austin Eckler did return, but I wanted to talk about him and I felt like this is the best place to do it. He was dealing with some kind of injury and left for a bit to get his arm examined. He finished with just 3 targets. That was his second lowest mark this year. Joshua Kelly had 10 carries and 2 targets. So part of the usage was Eckler missing time. But I also think that having both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams healthy could impact things for Eckler. So are you lowering Eckler at all based on his usage on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not the hugest advocates of playing Austin Eckler from a process.
Him. We just don't like using him.
Yeah. And we understand what the upside is. We understand that there are odds that he burns us, but it's not a perfect role. And I think you made a great point with having Allen and Mike Williams back, because this would have been just their second full game together?
Full game.
Because last week was their first full, because we were arguing about Justin Herbert. They're not going to use
him in my highest dollar single entry lineup, and I hated myself.
Herbert?
Yeah. I had Zay in it, and it just didn't matter.
I just it's one of those where they're not going to need to run Eckler into the ground. And so he still could come on. I'm not saying he won't see the field between the 20s, but he still has multiple touchdown upside, I'm sure, because he's not playing 30. This is not a DeAndre Swift situation. And it's not going to be.
No.
but the odds that he torches us go down drastically if he doesn't get the chance for 10 targets.
Right.
So I think he's probably going to end up
yardage
oversalaried.
at some point. Yardage matters.
Yeah.
And like, it's hard to get yardage if you're coming into like pounding touchdowns and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's a downgrade.
Despite that, I'm still kind of thankful that he's not on the main slate.
For sure.
Because I'd still be fearful.
He'd go for 4 touchdowns, which is 24 FanDuel points, and have like 30 yards and be like, I got 27. Haha. And I'd be like, dang it. So yes, I agree. I'm grateful he's not in the main slate. Okay, let's dig into role changes here from this past week. This one is noteworthy because we talked about before the Bears bye week, Justin Fields running less, coming up that shoulder injury. That did not carry over past the bye. 15 carries, 95 yards, and a touchdown. No touchdown. That one got called back. He had a season low 6 carries before their bye. Fields did leave briefly. It seemed like he was cramping. He's mentioned feeling tired legs recently, but he kind of just kept going despite that. So is Fields back to being like a no-brainer DFS elite play regardless of the game environment once again because of the rushing?
So we're gonna have to answer that question because they play the Bills this week. They host the Bills.
Bad weather in that game. Of course, this is where I'm driving to. So, like, of course, there's bad weather. Like,
if you told me we were getting a late December game between Buffalo and Chicago, I was like, it doesn't matter where it is, the weather's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, we'll figure out like a salary here. But if this was more in a vacuum, this would be a really good spot, or a really good trend to see Fields rushing the way that he did. He looked really good, and I thought maybe he like hurt his ankle or hamstring, but it was just, I think just the
cramping,
it was
hamstring too,
and he came back. So, I mean, if he was playing a neutral matchup indoors, like wheels up against Buffalo with terrible weather, maybe a little bit worse, but to see him rush like this is phenomenal.
So it's 19 mile per hour winds, which is
he don't throw,
bummer.
so it don't matter.
That's true. He has no one to throw to, because I think someone else got hurt in this game. He had a touchdown pass to Byron Pringle. Did Equanimeous St. Brown get? I think Equanimeous.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, he had concussion. There was no Chase Claypool in this game. It's just Kmet, basically.
Yeah.
Name me a salary on Fields against the Bills, factoring in the fact that there will be high winds and 8-degree temperatures.
High winds, bad weather, tough matchup, nobody to throw to. I feel like he should be like 84.
I thought too. He's 78. Low enough to be tempting.
Yeah.
Is what I would say on that.
Yeah.
If he's going to run 15 times.
I mean, he might run 20 times if the weather is that bad and they just.
Yeah. I would say that would also be a good thing for David Montgomery, but Khalil Herbert eligible to come back this week. I think this is his first week where he can come back. So to be determined on that. But that's low enough for Fields to be at least noteworthy, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. With no Deebo Samuel, the 49ers continued to feed Christian McCaffrey. He had 26 carries and a team high 8 targets for 138 total yards and a rushing touchdown. George Kittle scored twice. He had 93 yards and 5 targets. Juwan Jennings also had 5 targets. Brandon Ayuk had 4. McCaffrey is like vintage McCaffrey right now. But with Deebo out a few more weeks, where are you with Kittle, Ayuk, and potentially Juwan Jennings?
It's tough. Like Kittle's salary is going to go up after the game that he had, but the volume's still concerning. Ayuk, you like tied to Brock Purdy. I think you need more volume for me to feel great. I'm not saying it's a bad situation.
Well, yeah, it's a better situation than he had before.
I'm not saying it's like as bad a situation as it could be for some teams, like maybe the Cardinals, but it's really hard with the amount of usage that McCaffrey's getting to want to play anyone else. This kind of feels like McCaffrey just went from Carolina to a really good situation that got really bad really fast in a way. And like he might just be doing everything himself again. I mean, like George Kittle is great. I think Brandon Ayuk is really
good. But like the offense
is
still efficient. So he's doing everything himself, but like because of him.
Yeah. So like
fun.
It is better. It's not as good as it could be, but I don't really have a whole lot of interest in like chasing the Kittle touchdowns.
Yeah, he's 7,000, so that's high.
That's tough.
After
Ayuk,
5 targets.
yeah, like you need Ayuk to get more than 4 targets, and I'm not sure how much he'll get.
Yeah.
So where are you with Ayuk? Give me a salary for Ayuk.
It's 68. It's way too high for me.
Well, yeah.
So I'm not going to bother. With McCaffrey though, like, okay,
He's got to be in the 9,000 range. Like,
so he's facing
question.
Washington, tough defense, but we saw Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley do plenty against them last night. McCaffrey's getting 10 targets a game, so we don't really care about the rushing matchup. Like, his salary is 94. You could tell me it was 10,000 and I would be like, okay, that makes sense. That I think that to me says 94 is either it's not too high. It's either appropriate or too low. It's one of those two to me.
Yeah, I think it's totally viable. The question is just, can we get there? But I guess maybe the real question is this back to a Christian McCaffrey situation where we need to find ways to get there because he's going to get us 20. And if you can kind of pencil in 20, you don't really write that off too quickly.
So not only does he have the yardage that he's had in the games with Eli Mitchell, I think his red zone share is like 69 somewhere percent. It's very high. So he has like 130 yards, like kind of baked in, which is 13 points, not counting the half points for a catch, plus any touchdowns. So like, I think he's actually like really, really worth seeking out again. I think my answer is yes to that.
So then we need to find ways to get to McCaffrey. So he's, by that logic, he should be a write down.
69.2% red zone share for McCaffrey in 4 full games without Eli Mitchell. 149 yards in scrimmage, 146, 153, 138. It's insane.
Seems good.
I think he's almost a write down.
So, all right, it's going to sound how it sounds, but I need to do the math here. 3. So would you play Christian McCaffrey at 82 and Kenneth Walker at 81 together?
Yes. Like, and I think I can do that.
Or like if you need Walker to be 77 and McCaffrey be like 80, 85, or like
happily, without a doubt.
So I pretty much have my 2 running backs figured out.
Those 2 running backs are, I liked Henry a lot this week. I liked Etienne. I liked Kamara. I think those 2 guys are better than any running back play we had this week. Would you agree with that?
I could not even find a third love for the preview show for this week. So yeah, I agree.
Okay. I accidentally called Saquon Barkley Christian McCaffrey earlier. So let's talk about Saquon Barkley right now. Bounce back after his neck injury last week, 87% snap rate, season high 8 targets for Saquon Barkley. His 34 adjusted opportunities were his 3rd highest mark of the year. He ran well. What?
That's a lot to be your 3rd best game.
Yeah. He ran well against a very tough defense. They're currently in the playoffs, facing the Vikings next week. Tough rush defense, but not the best defense overall. So are we buying back into Saquon Barkley after this game?
I think so. I just can't get as excited about him as McCaffrey.
Well, that's not disregard McCaffrey. That's locked in. Talk to me about Saquon or independent of that.
But I'm saying like we're probably going to have to face that question. And
we might not, depending on Saquon's previous salaries. I have not looked at his salary yet, but I think there's a chance it might be low.
That's true.
Give me your salary on Saquon, and then we'll go from there.
All right. So he had 87% of the snaps, 75% of the routes, 8 targets. He's got to be like 88.
Agree.
Right?
85.
Can I make that work?
So if you go with Saquon, McCaffrey, Kenneth, you're at 58, 67 left with no defense. So let's put in buddy. I was going to put in the Bears. That seems kind of bad, kind of gross. Let's go with
Carolina versus hosting.
How
Detroit.
Dare you? Come on. Against my son Jared? No.
Yeah.
Rude. I'll put in the Bears, whatever. 64-20 left without a quarterback yet. So we need a lot of value at tight end and receiver, but I think that's doable. And I think that Saquon's kind of worth it.
He's like a write down in pencil.
Yeah, with the eraser in hand. But I think that's still intriguing because the usage on Sunday was good. That's fine. But I thought he looked better. And I don't want to use eye test to like dictate a lot of stuff for me because like that can lead you astray a lot of times. But when it's eye test after they've been in a slump and it's paired with good usage, I'm okay factoring that in then.
I was gonna say, you know who else looked really good in that game? Brian Robinson. Every time he got the ball, he was like running like crazy. And
I was wondering who you're gonna say because I guess Jahan Dotson looked good. Does that count?
Yeah, because I still I'll have nightmares forever for taking Sky Moore over Jahan Dotson in a dynasty league, but it is what it is. But Rob, so it's not just the eye test because you'll find some guys who look really good, and the role's not quite there. So
I think 85 is a half right down what you said.
Yeah.
Like, I think the bigger takeaway is running back this week is infinitely better than it was last week so far.
And this is not to backpedal on McCaffrey because I love it, and I think that he should be someone we prioritize. But if there's not enough value to the point where I have to bump down from McCaffrey to Barkley,
great consolation prize.
I'm okay with that. Yeah,
absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree. If you had to bump down to Jerick McKinnon, how about that? His role got even better this week. He played 62% of the snaps. He had 10 carries. What? The 10 carries were a season high. It was the second time with at least a 60% snap rate. McKinnon had 120 yards from scrimmage for the second straight game. Isaiah Pacheco lost a fumble, so the increase in rush attempts for McKinnon wasn't just because the game went to OT. So we talked McKinnon last week, but it's now been confirmed for another game. And it wasn't just on like broken plays as we saw last week. So where are you on McKinnon now after another positive bump?
Yeah, it's weird because we've loved McKinnon forever on this podcast. And now it comes at the expense of Isaiah Pacheco, who we also love. So but over the past 2 games now combined, he's at a 59% snap rate, 63% of the routes, 8.5 targets per game in that span. That's sick. Although I did think that whenever you said those 10 carries were a season high, I thought you were going to say those 10 carries were his first 10 of the season. But he's got a pretty solid red zone role. He's the guy that kind of kept me off of Isaiah Pacheco in the past in the red zone. 29% red zone opportunity share over the past 2 games. 1 red zone target per game. Getting some downfield work as well, which is wild. I have him at 2 downfield targets, 10 plus yards downfield over the past 2 games. So I feel good. Give me a salary for McKinnon.
So it's hard because like he's a better version of like old school James White, I think is the way I'd phrase it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And that's probably worth around like 69 or so, right?
Yeah, I'd say once there's a 7 there, I'm a little like, I don't know if it's that good of a situation.
Yeah.
Because if they were to get out ahead, I don't think his role would be what it has been. I mean, that game this past week was a lot closer than it. Houston's doing some stuff.
Yeah.
But his salary is 73.
Okay.
It's a little high.
Checo's 67. He has had 97, 93, 82, 86, 107, 82 yards from scrimmage the past 5 games. I think 67 on Pacheco actually is low enough to tempt me. If he winds up being like 10% rostered, absolutely not. Hard pass. I can't justify that. But if he winds up where no one's going to use him, I think that's low enough where you can consider it.
And I'll have another note on Kansas City, but they've been a little more run heavy lately. They play Seattle, who is not particularly good.
They're bad
against the rush.
Actively bad.
5th in rushing yards over expectation per carry allowed to running back specifically.
I just want to get a read on that situation in terms of like projected roster rates, because if we can get Pacheco at, on 0 rosters, that's very intriguing.
Yeah.
One question from William.
Running back stack in that game.
Oh yeah, fine.
really appealing.
Yeah. Good question from William on YouTube asking how much would Mecole Hardman's return impact McKinnon? That's actually a pretty good question, I think, because Hardman does get like similar usage in terms of like short dump offs. He can get some rushing attempts as well. Would Hardman's assumed return impact, and I guess also Kadarius Toney being back, would those impact your view of McKinnon and your willingness to pay 73?
They would, but I mean, to be clear, like my willingness to pay 73 is not that high to begin with. I think he's a bit capped at what his salary would be. So if we get those guys back and healthy, I still think he's oversalaried to begin with, but then I would probably backpedal even more. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I just still question the upside. I know that like he's done it twice now, so I shouldn't, but just a little bit concerning there. I don't think we have a note on Kadarius Toney, but he ran just 3 routes this past week, so I need to see more there. It also does not impact Juju or Kelsey for me yet. So even with Hardman back, I think that Kelsey, Juju still totally fine plays. Kelsey's salary is 86. My gosh. Juju 73. That's fine. But I think the ground game will be worth digging into more as we get set for Wednesday's show.
Yeah. Just
all right.
Disappointing Kelsey didn't score because I did call the 100-yard game, but
yeah, I think he and Juju combined to like catch 20 of 20 targets, which is pretty sick. Okay, so the Browns actually have a chance to make the playoffs still, and Nick Chubb quietly played a season high 72% snap rate for the Browns on Saturday. It's a 1% shot, so that is what it is. But Chubb had 21 carries and 2 targets, 99 yards in scrimmage against a very tough Baltimore defense. Would an increased snap rate push up your interest in Chubb heading into week 16?
It would, because my interest in Nick Chubb is generally 0 and has been 0. I don't want to get ahead of myself because I don't like what this offense has done with Deshaun Watson. It's been pretty bad.
Yeah.
They've been a little bit more pass heavy than their full season rate, but I don't necessarily know if that's like a good thing because I'm still not very impressed with the situation. For whatever reason, my TV service did not record the Browns-Ravens game, so I had to watch the 12-minute cut up on YouTube, which is a really good tool if that's all you have to work with. But that game was so uninteresting that I struggled to get through the 12-minute cut up. So
yeah,
that probably tells me some things about how I feel about the Browns offense, and the numbers back it up too. So give me a salary for Nick Chubb.
Well, the weather plays into this. Weather in Cleveland on Saturday, 3 to 7 inches of snow in the morning.
Nice.
Temperatures 14 degrees, but 27-mile-per-hour winds. So I just built out this totals model. We're gonna do this live because it's not. I don't know if it's good enough to I can give away stuff anyway. Okay, so right now, if I run it without adjusting for this week yet, and without putting wind in, if I assume 0-mile-per-hour winds, total for that game would be 44.1. If I put in 27-mile-per-hour winds, it goes down to 39.5, which does imply the over is still interesting, but it's low if you put in 27-mile-per-hour winds. So low total, not a terrible defense in the Saints, not a super great team. What'd you say for Chubb?
I asked you because I'm I have my biases with Nick Chubb.
Factoring in the bump, I would say 82.
I'd say 8,000.
Okay. He is 79. So that's fair. Not a write down, but not bad. Another running back who's in play.
Yeah, I would find ways to get to Saquon instead.
I agree. Saquon is the better value between the two relative to salary. I'd agree with that as well. Joe Mixon's role did not expand in week 15. He had a 61% snap rate after playing 59% last week. The Bengals pretty pass heavy in a negative script, despite at one point leading by 17 points. They were in a negative script for a large portion of this game, which is just a hilarious game. They probably should be playing from ahead against the Patriots next week. But where do you need Mixon's salary to be to account for the role change he's had since his return?
It's been tough. I went from saying look, I think Samaje Perine earned more work for like weeks, and Joe Mixon was like going to return, but did, and I was like, this is what's going to happen. Mixon's going to get scaled back. They don't need to run him into the ground.
Yeah.
Then Zach Taylor says, no, he's our starting running back. He scored 5 touchdowns last time he played. He's come back to a part-time role. I know that not every running back has a flawless role, but if there's a 2-minute drill for the Bengals, I know who's going to be on the field, and it's not Joe Mixon.
Correct.
And unless that's fully factored in with his salary, those are like high value snaps.
Oh, yeah. And the third down snaps too.
Yeah. It's tough. So I might say a salary that's too low to be realistic, but I would honestly put him in like the 76 range.
I said 75 in my head. I think that's fully accurate. He's 75 exactly though.
Okay.
That's the problem. They did that last week too. They bumped down his salary a lot, and it got me to where I was interested in him as a tournament pivot, and I used him. But I feel like they're there again. But it's like an appropriate bump down, not where I'm like actively seeking him out. But he's at least in play, so like it's sharp salarying. Is that a verb? But like I wish it weren't. I kind of wish they'd just keep him high so I could cross him off.
So the question is, and do you like Joe Mixon for this week? Or do you like the salary of Joe Mixon? Therefore, you talk yourself into Joe Mixon, who you wouldn't play otherwise. Like, I basically want to play guys if their salary was like within a band. Like, I don't care what your actual number is. I want to play like this guy. And Joe Mixon feels like someone I would play because of the salary, not because of what I'm seeing in the spreadsheets.
So last week, 106 yards for Mixon. This week, 23 adjusted opportunities, 11 carries, still have 6 targets.
Yards.
No, sorry, my bad. 54 yards. That's still bad. But, and that wasn't like a Bucs rush defense thing because Vita Vea was out. So like he should have been more efficient on the ground.
Yeah.
But 7 out of 19 red zone chances, which is 37%. I'm not actively seeking him out in that range.
Right.
So I think it's like fair.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's like a terrible salary. It's more, but like what like
if I know Kenneth Walker at 69, if I know Saquon at 85, if I know McCaffrey at 94, I'm ranking all of them well above him to the point where he's not even like a pivot to me.
Yeah. And like at this point though, if his role is going to be a 65, maybe 70% snap rate at the peak, what is the true upside? Like
it's still high because that offense is so good, right? Because he's good. So it's still high.
So I'm not going to say it's an Austin Eckler situation. Like there's still that chance, but it's a lot lower than it has been.
There's overlap there for sure.
If only we could stack the Patriots, I'd get there more, but I ain't going to do that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that game. Not the play at the end. Let's talk about the Raiders. Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow coming back here for the Raiders. First time since week 5 to have both those guys. Devontae Adams led with 9 targets, which is a 28% share. Mac Hollins had a touchdown. I believe he had a touchdown. He had 8 targets, 20.3 yard ADOT for 162 air yards. Because Mac Hollins, good at football. I like that. That's fun. Darren Waller, just 3 targets, but he did have a touchdown, ran a route on 66% of the dropbacks or the team's routes. Foster Moreau played a lot early in that game. I think Waller kind of ramped up as things went along. I could check that because I was just kind of based on watching. But Hunter Renfrow, 59% route rates. He had 1 in 3 targets that he caught. So can we still use Hollins, or do you anticipate an uptick for Waller and Renfrow to make this team kind of just muddied behind Devontae and Josh Jacobs?
I just hate this team. Like Devontae's workload's almost always going to be good. It was not as good as I thought it would be because I did a trend on this team, and Devontae had a sort of a down week the week before. I know it was he was going to be the focal point of what the Patriots tried to stop. You still want to see him getting force-fed targets, but I'm fine if it's going to be Mac Hollins doing things. Mac Hollins is fun. He's good. Did he get – I forgot to look if he had any rushing attempts because he's been getting some of them.
4 on the Thursday night game.
He did not have any in week 15, which is sad for me. But like even with all those air yards, just the 40 receiving yards, I just I'm sorry, Derek Carr doesn't really strike a whole lot of fear into me. And if he's going to if he has more people to spread the ball to,
they're running a lot too.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's annoying. Not super into that. I also want to get your read on Josh Jacobs because it could be just noise. But if we look at the games he's played with Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs' target share this year is 9.1%. He had 3 targets on Sunday, 3 out of 32, 9.4%. If you exclude weeks 1 and 2 before Jacobs' role expanded, it's a 12% target share, whereas his target share is 15.3% without Renfrow. Is that noise? Or is it they operate in kind of the same part of the field, so it actually might be a downgrade for Jacobs?
Probably is a downgrade for Jacobs. Renfro, what's his A dot here? 6.6. That's a tough scene. Yeah, I think it would make sense that that he's at least, even if he's not getting the targets, he's operating in similar areas of the field, and that's going to bump down Jacobs. So yeah, I would probably say this is a downgrade. Also, I mean, you kind of got to factor in some of the subjectivity to all this too, because Jacobs has been banged up all season.
Free agent after this year. Like they might want to get a look at Zamir White at some point, or at least something.
Yeah. So I am lower on Jacobs. Again, though, I'm kind of thankful this team's not, despite all my not really interested. I'm kind of glad they're not on the main slate.
Yeah, because it's hard to prioritize Devontae given the game environments they typically have, and he can burn me. So I just don't want him on the slate. So
Correct.
That helps.
Correct.
I'm glad they're on Saturday night. Ramondre Stevenson's snap rate did scale back a bit after his week 14 injury, but still he played great. He had a 68% snap rate. That's his lowest since week 7 in games that he's finished, but 19 carries, 3 targets, $168 and a touchdown. Stevenson had 5 carries of 10 plus yards. He averaged 9.1 yards per carry. We will not discuss what happened at the end of some of those runs. But where are you with Stevenson? Especially if we assume that Damian Harris is back next week, which I think he will be.
Yeah, there's that. There's the fact that he's taken the blame for that play.
I feel bad for him and Jacoby Myers because they both took blame for it, and it's I want to get my jokes off. I'm not getting my jokes off at the expense of you because I like both of them. So I want to make it clear, as I know they're avid listeners.
Yeah.
Ramondre, Jacoby, this is not at you. It's directed at your coaching staff, not Bill Belichick either. Not throwing shade at him. I'm throwing shade at their pieces there. This is not directed to you guys. You're great. Keep being great. Keep doing your thing, but bad.
I like how you're naming all these names of people you're not throwing shade at to whittle down the list.
Exactly.
You could. It's I don't know if you do you watch. Have you seen The Office?
What?
I don't know.
We talked about The Office.
Not really.
I seen screenshots of me rewatching it at one point. Come on.
I don't remember that. Well, but there's early on, Michael Scott has to fire someone. He fires Devin, and he goes through and invites people out for drinks and names 12 of the 13 names of who's invited to go out. So instead of just saying Michael, you can't come, he just names everyone else. And that felt a little bit like what you were doing there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I would be low on Stevenson for a few reasons. I think the salary also has just been elevated to the point that I don't expect it to come back down.
Yeah.
Anticipatorily.
Yeah.
If that's a word.
Sure.
So I think he's probably going to be at too high of a salary for what I want. Give me a salary for Ramondre next week against the Bengals.
If we assume Harris is back,
right,
77. If there's no Harris, he'd be 85. But I think it's an actual downgrade.
I would say 76 personally.
Yeah.
His salary is 83.
Yeah.
So you were right, and I think that's just too high.
Yeah.
Take a step back. Saquon versus Ramondre. I'm not saying that there's always ways to get an extra 200 in your lineups, but I'd rather completely punt with defense to get this.
Would you rather use Ramondre at 83 or Joe Mixon at 75 in that same game?
Mixon.
I agree. How much would you pay to watch you're a wrestling guy, a steel cage match between Mac Jones and Matt Patricia? I think they'd kill each other.
I don't think they could sell. Well, Mac Jones was pretty animated, so maybe he'd be a good seller. But also, we're talking pro wrestling.
I think he fights with a lot of chaos. There are limbs flying despite the fact they're doing nothing. I think that's what he would do.
Are we talking MMA or pro wrestling?
Both, all the above. I don't care.
It'd be better
I just
as
want to watch them
MMA
fight.
because I don't think that they.
I also think Mac Jones wants this to happen. Hey,
Yeah,
Mac, we're gonna let you fight one of your coaches. How quickly are you in?
He was fired up in what I think were all the wrong ways if I were his teammate.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like, can you imagine the think pieces we'd read if that were not Mac Jones? Like, if Justin Fields were yelling at his coach that way, like, imagine
Or
the think pieces we'd
Cam
read.
Newton
Or anyone.
leading
Like,
the
almost
Patriots.
anyone.
Cam Newton always got the worst of all of that.
Yeah. Like, it's so funny to me as, like, it's so funny. I want him to keep doing it, but it is awful behavior.
Yeah.
It's objectively hilarious. Also objectively hilarious is KJ Osborne going nuts. 16 targets to the Vikings. What? So they threw a ton because, again, they were down 33-0 at halftime, but that's still a 29.6% target share. One of those was deep. 3 were in the red zone. It was the second time Osborne has had more than 5 targets since the TJ Hawkinson trade. He did 11-1, but just 2 times above 5. So Osborne has some legit talent, but this is a big deviation from the role he has had this year. So are you buying to this being a legit role shift for KJ Osborne?
I would like to, so that I have multiple pieces and someone other than Justin Jefferson to target in this passing offense, because Jefferson's always hard to prioritize by himself.
Yeah. Well,
although I've done it.
Yeah.
And I like doing it
recently. I have recently. Yeah. It's been great.
But there's like good peripheral numbers there. 4 downfield targets for him, 3 in the red zone, 2 in the end zone from this week. I like it. Adam Thielen was apparently on the sideline, not very happy with like his role in this game, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to have them go away from KJ Osborne, who did what he did on his targets.
Yeah.
To instead throw to Adam Thielen, who's maybe not the juiciest guy. So I think that this is fairly legit. My only fear is
does it hurt
that the salary goes way too high.
So they're facing the Giants next week. Targetable matchup. It is indoors, so no weather concerns unless we get another. I guess the dome can't collapse this time because it's glass. That'd be worse. But name me a salary on Osborne.
One that's realistic for how good that role was, but also the fact that this is not like for certain. I'd say 6,000.
I think 6,000 is fair. It's 61.
Okay.
Like he'd be an option, I think.
Yeah, in game stacks. He's not someone you target outside of game stacks, correct?
Like as a bring back for Saquon, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Okay, because it's just one of those, like, the upside could be worth it if you stack that game and hope that the roll sticks, but it's not so good that you play him as a one-off, assuming the roll sticks, because that's not necessarily something that we can say with absolute certainty.
So he's had more than 40 yards twice this year, and the other instance was not the game where he got 11 targets. He had 35 yards in that game. He had 8 for 73 against the Lions. If he gets popular, that's an avoid. Like Chris Moore-esque, I think.
Even in stacks?
Yeah, potentially.
I'd be higher on Osborne than Moore if we're going like this week, because I believe more in this offense.
Yeah, that's fair.
To be relevant.
Hawkinson 6,000. I think I'd rather like find the way to make him work versus going to Osborne at that point. If Osborne gets popular, which I think he probably will, given
so
point
dusty.
chasing. Hawkinson?
Yeah.
Is he?
He's pretty dusty.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, so he had a lot of leverage on his target. So he caught 3 of 9 targets for 33 yards, but 101 air yards on them, 4 downfield targets, 8 out of 11.2. It's a
regression.
Sure.
Regression's all we need. Latavius Murray took on a bigger role this week with no Russ and no Mike Boone. 64% snap rate for Murray, 24 carries and a target into 142 yards. Wilson should be back for Christmas, as he did clear concussion protocol. What's your interest level in Shush. Stop making that face. Okay. The reason I poo-pooed you bringing up Latavius is because Mike Boone is coming back. Mike Boone is better at football than Marlon Mack and Divine Ozigbo. I'm not saying I'm going to use him. I'm saying I can at least talk about it because he actually did something with it this time. Go ahead.
Sure. I got nothing to say, man. I'm just letting you cook on this one.
I'm not going to cook.
Look, at a certain point, workload can matter. And while Latavius Murray may not be as good as he used to be, and this offense is not great, I think you were just a bit too low on him.
No. Maybe entering this week after Mike Boone is not available, maybe. But before that, no, I think I was right. I've never been wrong in my life.
I'm gonna have to play this one back because I didn't say anything and you just went.
I could see your face.
I know, but you literally yelled at me. You skipped over Latavius Murray blurbs, then had the audacity to talk to me about Cam Akers 5 minutes later.
That's fair. No, Murray was in role changes and Akers was in situations to monitor. Those are two very different sections.
They are, to be fair.
But I would have told you 0 ETNs on Cam Akers. So like,
yeah, how many ETNs on Murray?
Now?
Yeah. And keep in mind, 10 ETNs is not fully Travis Etienne. It's 5 was like where he was early in the season whenever we were super monitoring his situation.
Before he broke out.
Yeah.
I would say Latavius is at 3 ETNs out of 10.
I'd go 3.5.
Okay, fair enough. Jahan Dotson's snaps were up before the bye week, which was fun. And then he played really well Sunday night. He tied for the team high with 6 targets. He caught both his deep targets, finished with 105 yards. Terry McLaurin had 6 targets for 70 yards. They're playing San Francisco next week, which means they're on the road. Probably going to be trailing in that game. Does this put Dotson in play for you, or does it just hurt the appeal of Terry McLaurin?
I think it hurts Terry, especially if Dotson's going to get downfield work. So over the pre-bye game and this game, he's averaging 3.5 downfield targets. McLaurin's at 3. He's running more routes, though, than Curtis Samuel. I think it hurt. I don't know if there's enough, I'm going to say juice again, in this offense to want to get there. The question, though, is you said they're playing the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like any of these guys enough to bring back your McCaffrey stacks? If so, who do you prefer, or does it depend on salary?
Depends on salary. If I assume Dotson is still pretty low, my interest level would be pretty high.
I mean, they did play Sunday night, so...
Right. That's kind of why I assume it might be low. If Dotson comes in at 55, I'll be very interested.
Well, Dotson came in at 57.
Still interested? No, I will drop the very, which is a bad word anyway, so it's fine to drop it. I am interested in Dotson at 57.
Harry 7,000. Curtis Samuel 50. Do you prefer Curtis Samuel at 56 or Dotson at 57?
Dotson, baby.
Well, keep in mind that Curtis Samuel has to keep alive the spirit of Deebo Samuel in that matchup and get like 7 wide receiver carries. Got to think about that.
Dotson. I just like Dotson.
I think Dotson for me as well.
We hadn't had yardage upside before, but he was getting deep targets, which meant that I use this phrase to justify Michael Gallup this week. So if it triggers something in your brain, you're like, Jim, stop. I apologize, but he has the building blocks for upside. And he finally showed those on Sunday with the 105 yards. He caught the downfield targets. I don't think Heineke's good enough for us to bank on the downfield targets converting going forward. And they might get shut out in this game, honestly. But I think that 57 is low enough for me to have interest in him. Any
interest in a running back with a 62% snap rate, 69%?
I'm not using Antonio Gibson.
Okay. How low would his salary have to be?
3,000.
That's 58.
No.
Yeah, I'm there.
Not against that defense. Yeah. There's not a lot of upside there. But Dotson's low enough. Dotson low enough for you to have interest or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's good.
Okay. Speaking of 49ers people, let's talk about Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, who are not in the 49ers. But Raheem Mostert, big role with no Jeff Wilson, 77% snap rate, 17 carries and 2 targets, 156 yards. Wilson did get in a limited session on Thursday. He was questionable, didn't wind up playing. but it also means he may not get a full workload this week. I think we'll get Wilson back this week, but hypothetically, how would you view Mostert if we don't?
He looked good.
Yeah, he did.
I think he's a good running back. We know that he's fast, but looked good. Kind of glad that I don't have to play this guessing game. Also kind of glad in a way that I don't have the receivers to try to justify. Because as much as I like to play them, I'm kind of cool with fewer high-salaried receivers on a main slate that can torch me by not using them.
Yep.
Mostert without Wilson, I'd probably say like 71.
I'd say 77.
I know you'd be higher than that.
Yeah.
There's still a fear that he could get phased out a little bit.
But they're facing the Packers, who get shredded on the ground. I think the Miami will be willing to do that.
Yeah. But I think we're going to get Wilson back. And then at that rate, what would you put the salaries at?
Probably 67 for Mostert and 63 for Wilson.
Yeah, no arguments there.
Okay. Chuba Hubbard's role spiked at the expense of Deontay Foreman this week. Hubbard played 63% of the snaps. Foreman played 30%. The snaps didn't lead to a lot of work for Hubbard. He had just 4 carries for 10 yards, 3 targets for 57, but bad outcome for Foreman. I think this was kind of in play, given that Foreman had like a 40% snap rate last week in a positive script, but he still had 21 carries in that game, so I still used him at times this week. Can we just cross them off fully now?
Yeah. And look, we play running backs at flex almost always on this show. We've been talking in recent weeks where I'm more open to receiver in the flex. Despite that, in our head-to-head lineup, I forced in a third running back with Foreman, despite liking Zay Jones more, and that will haunt me forever. Especially if I have to buy you a hat and then look at it. I'll never forget this week.
Make you buy me a Zay Jones hat. Does he have merch? Is he big enough to have merch? Zay Day?
With another big game, I think. Yeah, we'll get there.
All right. Zay Jones, if you have merch, let me know. I'm in. With no Dameon Pierce, the Texans' backfield was a mess. Nobody played more than half the snaps or top 56 yards. Royce Freeman did lead in rushing attempts at 11. He led in snap rate at 47%. No receiving work on 5 routes. We can continue to avoid this backfield, correct?
Skip them.
All righty, let's go to situations to monitor. What else did you note from this past week?
Well, Kenneth Walker didn't have a role change because his role was still good, just didn't have a ton of production. 75% of the snaps, 12 carries, 5 targets, 79 yards. We already know what the salary is. Love it. Going to have a ton of Kenneth Walker this week. DeAndre Swift had 9 targets and led the Lions' backfield in snap rate. That's awesome. That snap rate, though, is 38%, so still nothing there.
Also, we need to stop complaining about Justin Jackson on Twitter. Complain about Jamal Williams because Justin Jackson's better than Jamal Williams.
Michael Pittman.
I'm going to bury it at the 68-minute mark of the podcast so no one's listening anymore. Yeah. Get my Justin Jackson takes off.
Michael Pittman, since Matt Ryan regained the starting quarterback position at 29% target share, 9 targets per game, 453 yards. Got 1 touchdown on 45 targets in that span.
What was that yardage number?
What's that?
What was that yardage number?
53 yards per game.
Yeah, 53 isn't 153 or 5.3?
5.3.0.
Two digits? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's tough. It's not a not tough scene. I'll say that much.
Fun team.
Chris Moore, once again, volume, 9 targets, just 42 yards though. Probably going to see volume because who else do they have? But don't really want to. I was worried about chasing last week's performance. This whole offense is awful. And Taysom Hill, 7 carries, 30 yards, 80 passing yards with a touchdown, but on just two attempts. Can still have a big game, obviously, but super low floor. Anytime we get Taysom Hill doing stuff, though, it's worth noting, but I wouldn't say it's like a full role change.
So he's playing in the Blizzard game in Cleveland. Shouldn't they just use Taysom at quarterback that entire game?
I think they should use Taysom at quarterback the entire game in
Regardless.
domes, in snow, if it's raining, if the air quality is problematic, just whatever.
He's 65 at tight end.
Why he's just always going to be there to protect in case he gets named like starting quarterback. so you just can't quite get there.
They should use him a quarterback this week, though.
Also, shout out to our guy Alvin Kamara, 104
Why?
scrimmage yards, but just 9 routes.
He lost a lot of work to David Johnson in the year of our Lord 2022. I had to check to make sure it's still 2022, and it is.
Shout out to my dynasty team again, David Johnson.
Yikes. J.K. Dobbins topped 120 yards for the second straight game, but it was on a 39% snap rate as they fell down in that game. They should get Lamar back, and Dobbins is playing well. So I'm receptive to him, but we need to keep in mind that he's not going to get passing game work. He is reliant on efficiency alone and absolutely nothing else. Baltimore gets Atlanta next week. Name me a salary on J.K. Dobbins.
We already looked it up. We don't really do name a salary because it's supposed to be like the quick hitter section.
I know.
So I already saw it. So give me a salary.
68?
He's 7,000.
That's fair.
It sure is, but in no world am I playing J.K. Dobbins.
My hope is that it keeps people away from Kenneth Walker.
I'm fine with that.
I would hope that. I don't think Dobbins is out of play at that salary. But I much prefer Walker.
Sure. We'll learn more about the running back landscape right there. But if not for Walker, I would probably say like Dobbins might be a strong consideration.
And if you need to use 2 lower salary backs to get to McCaffrey, I think he's in play for that potentially, at least.
Yeah.
Even with Cole Beasley making his debut, Gabe Davis still played nearly every snap for the Bills. He earned 6 targets, which is about in line with his usual mark. I thought this might be at risk with Beasley being there, John Brown being added. Isaiah McKenzie still played more than half the snaps. So I would say keep status quo for now, but keep monitoring the receiver snaps and routes for the Bills. Rashid Shaheed scored a long touchdown for the Saints. He had just 4 targets, but they also threw just 18 times. Juwan Johnson, 6 targets for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chris Olave, just 4 targets. I used sprinkles of Shaheed on Sunday, and I don't regret it, despite just the 4 targets. But I think the bigger takeaway may be that Olave's role is just not as good as it was earlier on this year. Avoid Shaheed this week in the snow in Cleveland, but be back on him potentially once they're back in the dome because he is really, really fun as a football player. Bummer not to get Olave, but Shaheed's fun too. Let's go into the philosophical changes. Talk about the Jets in their first game with Zach Wilson being back. He had a really bad pick. He had a low completion percentage and some other weird balls, but I thought it was still like somewhat encouraging because he was chucking it. And if you're going to be bad, at least DGAF it. And he did that. 0.21 passing net expected points per dropback. So decent number. His completion percentage over expectation was right at 0 because, again, chucking it. 14-yard ADOT. Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore both set new season highs in a Zach Wilson start for targets. Garrett had 9, Moore had 7. Garrett Wilson's 6 deep targets tied a season high regardless of who was starting. The Jets' early down first half pass rate was 64%. Now, all those came before the really bad pick. They seem to be a bit more conservative after that. So they weren't covering up Wilson as much as they were. I think it's a nice bump for Moore and Wilson going into the Thursday night game against the Jags. Where are you on them entering that game?
Higher than I would have been before this performance. Garrett Wilson, 18.4 yard ADOT, 8 downfield targets, which again for me are at least 10 yards downfield. It's still a good role. You were just talking about Chris Olave, and I see these guys going, Olave's trending down.
Yeah.
Wilson staying pretty steady as to where he was. Moore, he's fine. I don't know. Is Corey Davis going to be back by Thursday?
He didn't practice at all this week, I don't think. So it might be a tight turnaround for him to clear protocol.
So like without Davis, I think Moore's viable.
Mm-hmm.
My fear though is, well, I guess if this game were on the main slate, I'd still get some exposure to those guys because I like Jacksonville so much.
Yeah.
So there's that.
I think it's better than it was with Wilson previously, and I think that's encouraging. It was not good previously, so better than not good. It may not still be great, but it's better than it was. I know the pick was bad, but like there were still some fun plays in that game, and that's worth something. Desmond Ritter finished his debut, negative 0.43 passing EP or EPA per dropback, according to Next Gen Stats. The team had a 54% early down first half pass rate, which is pretty high for them. Ritter's ADOT was 8.9. His CPOE was negative 11.5%, but he did funnel targets to Drake London. London had double-digit targets and 70 yards. One of those was a deep target. So we talked about the backfield before, but is there enough here for you to target Drake London?
Rank Drake London, Michael Pittman, and Chris Moore. I'm sure there are more guys who fit the archetype, but like wide receiver one's pretty unquestioned in bad offenses.
Moore is last.
Yeah.
Probably Pittman over London, but they're never at the same salary, so it's hard for me to like, because I don't think I've used Michael Pittman this year.
Even though he's been burning us week after week.
What do you mean burning us?
Jim, it's called a joke.
Oh, sorry. I would probably go Pittman by a hair, but I don't like him relative to salary ever.
Okay. I was just thinking about it because they're all kind of like similar builds.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think London's viable in the right spots. So if I want to get to the other side, I guess like stacking Dobbins and London could be like an affordable mini stack.
Yeah.
Give me a salary for London.
So he was 63, and I had a couple shares in Shaheed stacks / Kamara stacks. So I would say probably 63 again.
64.
Okay.
I think I would have said 64 just to see it with Ritter helps me, but
sure.
I guess a London Dobbins stack put both of them at what, 67?
Yeah. It's 54, or sorry, 54. Wow. 15 mile per hour winds for that game on Saturday. But likely Lamar back, which helps I think both sides for that game. But London, I think, is averaging like 7.5 or 8 targets per game now in games without Pitts. So that's getting better. So that's encouraging, I think. What other notes did you have from this week in terms of philosophical stuff?
Just a few pass rate over expectation notes. The Browns had their highest pass rate over expectation of the season, but it was only 2.7 points. So they might not be as run heavy as they have been. I think in a way, though, at a certain point that can help a running back because you're not as one dimensional. If your passing offense isn't great, but like
that's their highest of the year.
Yeah,
that's nuts.
But even if you're like a low level passing efficiency team, that's still about as efficient as like a good rushing offense. So like I'm kind of okay with it. I think that actually helps me a little bit with Chubb to think that they can move the ball down the field a little bit quicker. Obviously, Nick Chubb can just he basically gains every rushing yard over expectation that there is in the NFL available. He's like over in like Vegas getting those yards over expectation, up in Seattle. But so I think that actually makes me a little bit higher on Chubb. The Bears pass rate over expectation in 2 games since Justin Fields his injury is a minus 6.0, which is obviously low. But before that, it was a minus 16.2. So not as rush heavy, despite the fact that his personal rushing numbers were good. So just a weird situation for him because the building blocks are there. It's gonna be a long conversation about Justin Fields for next week, and then just some rushing outliers from this week. Pittsburgh a minus 14.5, which is down 12.7 points from their season average. The true outliers this week: Baltimore, New England, Washington, and New Orleans dropped their pass rate over expectation by at least 6 points from their full season numbers, which I think all kind of makes sense.
All playing with backup level quarterbacks.
Yeah. And then 2 that I've been noting for a bit now, but Kansas City was a 0 this week, which is down from 10.5 for the season. Buffalo a minus 0.2, which is down 6.7 points from their season average. So both teams there been playing closer to the league average lately. It's just something to keep in mind with both of those squads.
I feel like they're kind of like Kansas City's been weird where they're like kind of like it started with that Rams game, but they're kind of like just effing around a little bit. It seems like
it feels like they are at least able to try some stuff and see what's working.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it keeps the games closer, so I'm not going to complain. I haven't bet their spreads. I don't really care that they're doing it, but like it's kind of weird that they're doing it.
It's fine. I mean, even with that, Mahomes 32.7 FanDuel points. I will say though, I'm just going to say this because we're 80 minutes into the show.
Yeah, do it. Fire.
I don't know what Marquez Valdez-Scantling does that Chris Conley couldn't be doing. And I think
so. This is the point where we get all of our player level takes off. Okay, good. And what else we want?
And I think the Chiefs locker room loves Chris Conley. So I'm just saying, I think they just gave him a contract, and they were like, "Well, we gotta."
I gotta apologize though. We need to sacrifice Chris Conley to get the Jags in the playoffs because he's on the Titans, and I want to watch Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs and not the Titans. I'm sorry. I need to sacrifice your boy.
They should have kept him on the Jaguars, though.
They should have kept him on the Chiefs, too. Yeah, he got cut from everywhere. Weird. He's great. I agree Chris Conley's awesome, so I do wish.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling is doing nothing that Chris Conley couldn't be doing.
That Sky Moore couldn't be doing. Anyone.
Well,
yeah, sorry. Fair enough. Okay, let's dig into the Week 16 salaries over on FanDuel. This is for the Saturday main slate. I don't think the Sunday one is posted yet for the 3-game slate. So we'll go through just Saturday for right now. Opening up the portal, going to quarterback. What do you see that stands out to you there?
Sorry, I was just double checking. Yeah, no Sunday slate yet that I see. Quarterback. Oh my goodness. We get Josh Allen at 95 and Mahomes at 92.
So why are they there and Hurts 87? Hurts, if they're going to shove guys in the 9,000 range, shouldn't Jalen Hurts be that guy?
Matchup, I guess.
I don't care.
Allen gets the Bears, like without weather, but Allen gets the Bears. Mahomes gets Seattle. Hurts gets the Cowboys. So
I think Jalen Hurts has proved it enough where he should be in the. He has 3 straight games with 30 plus FanDuel points. He had 29.8 the game before that.
He has 2 games below 20 FanDuel points this year. One of them was against the Cowboys with 16.9, and the other one, of course, against our Jaguars.
Oh yeah, naturally. But he gets Dallas Goedert back. Goddard practiced this whole week, which means he'll be healthier. I kind of think they were saving him for this game. I think they overlooked the Bears.
It's possible.
We're going to hold off on you, Dallas. So you get the Dallas narrative. Also, what's Miles Sanders' salary? 71. I think this might be a good week to get to Miles Sanders. I have not used him hardly at all this year, except for like single game stuff. I think they might have held him in. I know he was arguing with Nick Sirianni at one point in the sidelines, but I think they might have held Goddard out and kept Sanders' snap rate in check. Looking forward to this game. That could be like tinfoil hat stuff, but I think it might be correct.
Well, keep in mind, Miles Sanders tweeted that he doesn't care about fantasy. So
yeah, and he scores like bajillion touchdowns. So
same.
Okay, what else is he a quarterback?
It's pretty loaded at the top. We have Joe Burrow against New England. Fields at 78. Dak remains low at.
You
75.
Glossed over Lamar at 8,000.
That's just because he had the red tag.
He'll play this week, I think. Sounds like
my brain just.
I think he'll play. 8,000 is interesting. I don't know if I'll get there because of the wind, but
I mean, he had those 2 40-point games, and like I know it's not just about like box score watching, but he's just not throwing touchdowns even when he's like been healthier.
Yeah, his receivers stink too.
And like I think at a certain point,
yeah,
Mark Andrews is 100%. I'm not saying like he could come out and put up 40, but I think that goes from, I won't throw percentages out, but that's like cut in half for me with what his talent is around him.
Question for you. What's Dak's ceiling? He's 75 in a game that we're going to love, obviously.
I think like best outcome for him is like 290 and 3 and like maybe a rushing touchdown.
It's like 25, 27 FanDuel points.
I would say like at what point would you be surprised Like what like fantasy point number would you go like where you're surprised? And I'd say like if he got 28,
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised. If he got 29,
if he drops a 30 burger, I'd be a little surprised.
Yeah.
And like that stinks. I like Dak a lot. And I want to use him, but I question the ceiling.
They just don't have to throw. Like he doesn't have to throw for 300 yards.
Yeah.
And this team of all the stud, because I'd say Dak's like a stud in terms of talent. Their pass rate over expectation in recent games minus 8.8, minus 6.2, minus 10.6, minus 12.8. It's just it's sort of the offense. That's not really him, I don't think.
Right. I mean, they're content to run, which they should be because they're very good at it. So I get it.
And just before we move past that, there are tons of high upside quarterbacks this week. I think Dak made some sense this week. It's going to be harder to play Dak this week and forego the true upside.
I agree. I'm not going to use this person, so this is a fruitless comment, but why is Jared Goff 7,000? Shouldn't he be like 74?
Road game coming off of a 14-point game.
14-point game, but he had the second highest per dropback efficiency against the Jets this year, and Carolina is not the Jets.
I'm just explaining my situation here.
Oh,
I do like that Brock Purdy's salary is higher than Deshaun Watson's though.
I do too. Yeah.
Tannehill.
It made me think of Brock Purdy's nickname and it made me laugh. Got me
What's
pretty
his
happy. You can search it on Twitter.
Okay.
You remember BDN?
Yeah.
Think about variations of that rhymes with Brock.
Okay.
We're
a family show.
The Jared Goff salary is making me search up something, and DJ Chark is back down to 57. I'm back in. I'm back in, baby. You knew that this week wasn't. They sacrificed him to Sauce Gardner. They're like, here you go. You can have all the DJ Chark you want. DJ or cash or check. We'll see you next week. $5,700 for DJ Chark next week. Coming off a down game, no one's going to use him. DJ Chark.
I know you're going to say no, but I at least feel like I should address.
You should address
Ryan Tannehill against the Texans.
What? No, he's hurt. That's the main appeal of him is that he can like run sometimes, but he's hurt.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
How dare you? Ugh. DJ Chark was lined up against Sauce Gardner for 44% of his plays against DJ Reed, who's also pretty good for 38%. So like they just said, hey, cash or check, we'll see you next week. Chark at 57. Chark week is back. I'm in, baby. I'm in.
Oh no, that means we're gonna get Derrick Henry against the Texans.
Oh, that's boring.
Oh.
Okay, I'm moving to running back. Henry is 98. So we're going to prefer McCaffrey at 94 over Henry at 98. I can say that pretty definitively, correct?
Yeah.
What about Dalvin 87 versus Henry at 98? What do you think about that? I think I go Henry there.
I'd love to say that, but 98 is, I mean, I'm not saying 94 is not tough, but 98 is tough.
Yeah. Like the Texans, if we won out, the Texans have played a lot better recently.
That's true. I will say he had the 32 carries, 219, 2 touchdowns.
That was a Malik Willis game. Sorry.
I knew that.
I cut you off. Sorry.
I knew that.
My bad.
No,
sorry.
Because I don't remember stuff like that, but I remembered that one.
Okay.
Because I just looked it up.
My bad.
But
okay.
He's gonna be,
what else
he's gonna be chalk.
Stands out at running back to you?
We talked about a lot of the top guys already. I'm not playing Alvin Kamara. I don't care how much you pay. He could be 54. I'm not playing him.
I'd pay him. I'd play him at 64. He's 74, but I'd play him at 64.
Yeah, I would too.
We can joke, but we'd be there.
It'd be dramatic.
Yeah.
Jarek, I think, is oversalaried. So where are you with Miles Sanders then at 71? Like, is he a borderline write down? Where does he kind of line?
No.
Rank Kenneth Walker, J.K. Dobbins, Miles Sanders.
So I don't think he's in the same discussion as them. Maybe as Dobbins. He is.
Okay.
But I think the way I'd view him is similar to the way I viewed, like, this didn't work out, but the way I viewed Mixon this week, where the salary is not great, but he still has the ability to get you 30. and people probably won't use him, although they might. I'm hoping the clunker this past week from Miles Sanders throws people off where he just doesn't get rostered. 1.4 FanDuel points. He had a fumble. He had a negative 13-yard reception. So I hope that leads to his not being rostered because he'd be a really fun way to get exposure to that game. We talked about this last week where it seemed like they used Miles Sanders more in that game because it was a big game, that Giants game. And maybe they kind of use that as like their tell of like, oh, we use Miles more in important games. And this is the most important game they played all year.
Good gerund usage, by the way.
What did I say?
His not being used. I like that.
I didn't even notice it. Okay. But what do you think? Am I off on that? His salary came down a lot, $700.
Just game stacks only. I'm not going there outside of a game stack.
Right, but like, do you think that he is viable as a tournament pivot if he winds up going overlooked?
No, game stacks only.
Okay.
If I don't have other assets in that game, I'm not going to assume that he's going to have a big game by himself.
Okay. What else do you see? Running back besides Dobbins at 7,000 and Walker at 69, which we've already, at least for Walker, gushed over.
Not a whole lot other than Isaiah Pacheco being interesting at 67. I think the bottom falls out after that, though.
Yeah, Pacheco's yardage has still been very good, consistently good, which means that he probably has the upside to do more, especially against a bad rush defense. Now, it is concerning that he lost work this week after the fumble. But I think if you want an early down guy in a potentially positive script, he would be the guy who would benefit there still, despite that.
And just because we didn't talk about it, unless maybe you did, Devin Singletary, 62% snap rate, James Cook down to 34%. So that's like kind of that update with that backfield, but I'm not there.
Justin Jackson's 52 if you want the Lions' best back. Wide receiver, what you got there?
Some big names. Nobody jumping out right now as some big names, and then it falls off pretty quick, salary-wise.
Yeah, because you have Devontae Smith and T. Higgins, 76 and 77, and then it falls to Juju at 73. So the 7,000 range is like, just there's not that there's like not good plays, there just aren't many people in that range.
Just 5 names because Debo's out.
Oh, yeah. Looking into the 6,000 range, trying to.
Adam Thielen, 66 seems weird.
Way too high.
Maybe it's a good thing though that there's not a whole lot in the mid range because I'm going to need to spend some salary on quarterback and running back this week.
Right. Any interest in Darius Slayton at 63 or no? Because I don't think I want to get there, but
no.
Jacoby Myers at 62 or no?
Potentially, but probably not.
Yeah. Marquise Goodwin 58. Once again, I think that's okay. Jahan Dotson 57. That's okay. Redacted is 57. Gallup.
Go Gallup.
DJ Chark 57 though is the best.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna live in like the Dotson, Gallup, Chark.
Yeah.
Range.
All right, I'm gonna pull up the Charlotte weather for Saturday. Please pray for me. Briefly. Okay, at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 miles per hour. Compared to the rest of the slate, that's fine. I can deal with it. Chark week back. Chark week back. Chark week back. Ugh. And if he goes for a hundo again, I'm buying a DJ Chark jersey.
Not a team that I looked into because I just didn't care. What are your thoughts on any Baltimore pass catchers, assuming Lamar's back?
Nope.
Not even like because Duvernay.
I consider Andrews, but
Duvernay was at 2/3 of the routes.
Nope.
At 54 this week against the
Falcons. The problem is I like DeMarcus Robinson's cool. Devin Duvernay's cool. Like I like these guys. It's just like I don't know what the upside is of them, given the way they like how many targets Andrews gets, stuff like that. They might scale back Lamar in his first game back. So I think they're like fine. I just don't really want to use them in DFS.
Yeah, Chris Conley revenge game though, 52.
Against who? They're like 6 teams this year that he's played.
Whoa. Let's just respect, man.
Who is it? I actually don't know who he's playing.
Houston. We already talked about his
Oh.
quarterback and running back.
He played for the Jags. He's played for the Chiefs. He's played for the Titans. Been everywhere, man.
So realistically,
Chark.
this might be a week where I play three value receivers to get to the running backs I want. It's a little bit scary.
Yeah, I mean, like it's in play. I'll have at least one of those guys per lineup, most likely. Who's your favorite between? Who is your favorite between Chark, Gallup, Dotson, and Goodwin?
Probably Chark.
I agree. Scrolling down to low 5,000s quick just to see if there's anything that stands out down there before we close up there. Nothing. Quez Watkins is 51. Not with Goddard back, I guess, but what?
I'll pass.
He gets downfield work, man. That's all I care about. Downfield work, baby. Okay, tight end. Kelsey's 86.
Oh my god.
Mark Andrews is 64.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So if we get Lamar back and Andrews is 64, he's going to be the uber chalk.
Yep.
I will say before we move past Kelsey, at 86, there's only so much he can do.
Right.
To burn us.
Like you kind of need like a 30 burger to burn us, and he's had 2 this year. Wow, that's more than I thought.
Yeah.
But he's top 20 points 1, 2, only 3 times.
So, but like 86 of your salary cap leaves only so much room for projectable,
right,
findable upside before that. But like before games.
Yep, I agree. Andrews and Goddard at 64 and 62 respectively. I think both are going to be, and honestly, Schultz at 61 as well. I think those are all 3. Hawkinson at 6,000. Oh man, the 6,000 range is never good at tight end, but it's weird.
How dare you put TJ Hawkinson in that same conversation?
Fair enough. Sorry. But I hate that range always, but that's actually a really good range this week. Yeah. And there's Noah Fant at 53, who I do like too.
Wow, you've given some respect to Noah Fant, Latavius Murray.
Noah Fant, like there's no Tyler Lockett, so like of course I am.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's
he's pulled away from Will Dissly.
Who else? There's someone else that you've always hated.
I've never hated anyone, Brandon. All love.
I'll see if I can remember it, but
I've never hated anyone.
Yeah, so we got some.
Cole Kmet still looks like Max Verstappen, so I still want to punch him. But like 51 is, if it weren't for the wind in that game.
Chiga Conquo still relevant for me against Houston.
54 is not bad. Although, what if Burks is back? I guess I don't know if he'll be back this week, but he's Burks is 62, so. Yeah, I would say that Fant is the primary value guy there.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go below Fant or maybe Kmet if the weather's not super terrible. But after that, you're assuming that none of Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews, Goddard, Schultz, Hawkinson have like
they're guys with upside in that 6,000 range. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Note to future me. I think for me, this all comes down to find ways to get the upside running backs in there, because we actually have running backs with upside this week, and I want to get them in my lineups. What is the note to future you?
I think the alternate way to view that is study up the quarterbacks and see if there are guys who actually have the 30-point upside that you think is going to hit.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to, spend 87 plus to get there. If you cannot project that with some confidence at all, what are the odds that those guys at the higher salaries get there? So I think it's kind of maybe not as easy of a week where you just click in a stud quarterback, because we have a lot of stud running backs who seem like they're primed for big games.
Yeah, it's an interesting slate for sure. I'm excited to break it down in full with you on Wednesday. Again, we'll be here Wednesday at noon Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So go search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts, or the FanDuel YouTube page. This is our final recap show of the year because we're going into the holidays now. So do want to thank you all for tuning in for these shows every Monday throughout the season. We do appreciate you as always. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
They can't, but if they do, at Gdula13, GDULA13.
Will YouTube ban us for mentioning where to find us on another social platform? Is that how this will work?
Who could say?
Who can say? As long as my Twitter exists, I'm on Twitter at Jimsannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Good luck to you all on the Monday night single game slate. We'll talk to you once again Wednesday to preview the Week 16 main slate. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.